My name is Nora, and I never imagined that at 62 years old, I would be abandoned on a street with just $9 to my name. My daughter-in-law, Amanda, thought it would be funny to leave me stranded in a city 90 miles from home as a cruel prank, to teach me a lesson about being a burden. A week later, she had the nerve to text me saying, "Stop being so dramatic. It was just a joke." What she didn't know was that I had used 5 of those $9 to buy a lottery ticket out of desperation and won $62 million. Life has a funny way of turning the tables when you least expect it. Before I tell you how $9 turned my life upside down, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you believe karma has a way of balancing the scales. 5 years ago, I lost my husband, Robert, to pancreatic cancer. We had been married for 33 wonderful years, and his absence left a hole in my heart that I still feel every day. The medical bills from his lengthy treatment depleted most of our savings, leaving me with little more than my teacher's pension to live on. I had taught 3rd grade at Pinewood Elementary in our small Maine town for over 30 years before retiring, and while the pension kept a roof over my head, there wasn't much left for extras. Robert and I had one child, our son Michael. I raised him mostly on my own after his father and I divorced, when Michael was just 4 years old. Michael was always a bright, compassionate boy, the kind who would bring home stray animals and defend smaller kids on the playground. We had always been close, talking several times a week, even after he moved to Boston for a job in software development. Everything changed when Michael met Amanda at a charity gala 3 years ago. Amanda worked as an event planner for high-end clients in Boston, and she certainly looked the part. When Michael first introduced us over video chat, I was struck by her perfectly highlighted blonde hair, immaculate makeup, and designer clothes. She was 12 years younger than Michael, who was 40 at the time, but age gaps aren't unusual these days. I remember trying to be warm and welcoming during that first meeting. I smiled and asked about her work, her family, her interests. Amanda was charming and vivacious, complimenting my earrings and asking about my teaching career. But even then, there was something that felt off about her enthusiasm. It seemed practiced, like she was performing rather than connecting. Their romance moved at lightning speed. Within 8 months of meeting, they were engaged, and 3 months after that, married in an extravagant ceremony that must have cost a fortune. Michael seemed blissfully happy, though, so I kept my concerns to myself and focused on being supportive. After the wedding, I noticed subtle changes in Michael. Our twice-weekly phone calls dwindled to once a week, then once every 2 weeks. When we did talk, Amanda was often in the background commenting or interrupting. Sometimes I could hear her whispering to him, and he would abruptly change the subject or end the call. Visits became shorter and less frequent. Michael used to come up to Maine at least once a month, but now I was lucky to see him every 3 months. When I did visit them in Boston, Amanda always seemed to have urgent work, matters arise that required Michael's attention, leaving me alone in their condo or cutting our time together short. I made numerous attempts to build a relationship with Amanda. I sent her birthday cards with thoughtful gifts, asked about her interests, even tried to learn about fashion and events, so we would have something to discuss. Each overture was met with polite but distant appreciation. She would thank me for gifts with a quick text rather than a call, and deflect personal questions with vague answers before turning the conversation back to surface-level topics. As time went on, I noticed Amanda's increasing control over their finances and decisions. Michael, who had always been independent, now deferred to her on everything from vacation plans to which brand of coffee to buy. When I gently asked if everything was okay, he assured me that Amanda was just good with details, and he preferred to let her handle things. Amanda also began making subtle digs about my age and what she called my outdated ways. She would say things like, "Oh, Nora, that's such a cute grandmother outfit," or "I forget that people from your generation don't understand how modern relationships work." Each comment stung, but I tried to laugh them off, not wanting to create tension between Michael and me. I told myself she was just from a different generation, with different values. Meanwhile, my financial situation was becoming increasingly precarious. Robert's medical bills had eaten through most of our retirement savings, and inflation was making it harder to stretch my pension. When a pipe burst in my bathroom causing damage I couldn't afford to repair, Michael immediately offered financial help. I remember Amanda's reaction when he told her. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes went cold. Later, I overheard her saying, "It's not our job to bankroll your mother's life. We have our own future to think about." Despite this, Michael sent me enough money to cover the repairs. I was grateful but uncomfortable accepting it, especially knowing it caused friction between them. I promised myself I would find a way to be more financially independent. Then last month, I received notice that my apartment building needed emergency repairs due to black mold discovered in several units. The tenants were told we needed to vacate for at least 2 weeks while the work was done. With my limited income, staying at a hotel for that long was simply impossible. After considering all my options, I reluctantly called Michael to ask if I could stay with them briefly. There was a long pause after my request, and I could hear muffled voices as he covered the phone to consult with Amanda. When he returned to the call, his voice was strained, but he agreed I could stay. I was relieved, but already dreading the visit, sensing it would not be the warm family reunion I might have hoped for. The moment I arrived at Michael and Amanda's luxury condo in downtown Boston, I could feel the tension. Amanda opened the door with what I can only describe as a customer service smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Michael, thank God, your mother finally made it," she said, emphasizing, "finally," even though I had arrived exactly when I said I would. "We've had to rearrange our entire evening." Michael gave me a quick hug, whispering, "Don't mind her. She's stressed about a big event she's planning." The guest room, which would be my home for the next 2 weeks, was beautifully decorated, but sterile like a hotel room. There were no personal touches, not even a family photo. The adjoining bathroom had expensive toiletries laid out, but also a printed list of rules taped to the mirror. "Please limit showers to 10 minutes. Please Do not use master bathroom. Please keep all personal items in guest room. I felt like an intruder rather than family, but I told myself not to be oversensitive. I was grateful for a place to stay and determined to be as unobtrusive as possible. That first evening, I offered to cook dinner as a thank you. I had brought ingredients for my special lasagna, which had always been Michael's favorite. Amanda quickly intervened. "Oh, we can't possibly let you cook, Nora. You're our guest," she said, though her tone suggested I was more of an inconvenience than a guest. Besides, we're on a special diet. No gluten, no dairy. I've already ordered our usual salads from the organic place down the street. The salad, when it arrived, was a tiny portion of greens with a few seeds sprinkled on top, costing what seemed to me an outrageous $22 per person. I ate it without complaint, though I was still hungry afterward. Later that evening, while getting a glass of water from the kitchen, I overheard Amanda on the phone in the home office, the door slightly ajar. "It's absolute torture," she was saying to someone. "His mother is staying with us for 2 whole weeks. I can't even have a glass of wine without her giving me that judgmental teacher look. She's completely disrupting our routine." I quietly returned to my room, hurt, but not entirely surprised. I decided then to spend as much time out of the condo as possible during my stay, visiting the public library and museums to avoid being in their way. The next morning, I woke early and made coffee careful to clean everything immediately and leave no trace. When Michael emerged, he seemed pleased to see me and sat down for a chat before work. 10 minutes later, Amanda appeared in designer workout clothes, looking annoyed to find us talking. "Michael, didn't you have that early meeting today?" she asked, giving him a pointed look. He checked his watch and jumped up. "Right, I forgot. Sorry, Mom. We'll catch up later." He rushed out without even finishing his coffee. Amanda gave me a tight smile before grabbing her protein shake and retreating to their bedroom, without further conversation. This pattern continued for several days. Michael would make plans with me only to suddenly remember work obligations. Amanda would forget to include me in meal planning, ordering food only for 2, or making dinner plans with friends without telling me until the last minute. "I don't want you waiting around hungry," she would say with feigned concern after I'd discover they were going out. "There's bread for sandwiches in the fridge. Just make sure to clean up after yourself." On the 4th day of my stay, Amanda hosted a dinner party for some of her clients. She asked me to stay in my room for the evening, explaining that her clients expected a certain atmosphere, and having me there would make things awkward. "I wouldn't know what to talk about with your friends anyway," I said, trying to make light of the situation. "They're not my friends, they're clients," she corrected sharply. "And honestly, they're not interested in hearing stories about teaching 3rd graders from 30 years ago." Despite agreeing to stay out of sight, I could hear everything from my room, including Amanda telling a story about her technologically challenged mother-in-law, to uproarious laughter. Poor Nora tried to use our smart home system and ended up with all the lights flashing like a disco and the fire alarm going off. She recounted, embellishing what had been a minor confusion with the light switches. I had to explain to her that not everything needs to be controlled by clapping your hands. The guests laughed, and I felt my face burn with humiliation. The incident she described had never even happened. The The next day, I returned from a walk to find my belongings had been rearranged. The few family photos I had placed on the nightstand were now in a drawer, and my toiletries had been moved from the bathroom counter to a cabinet. I thought it would look tidier this way, Amanda explained when I asked about it. The cleaning service was coming, and I didn't want your things in their way. I nodded and said nothing, but the message was clear. My presence was to be minimized, my existence barely acknowledged. As the days passed, Michael became increasingly distant, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, but unwilling or unable to address it. He spent longer hours at work, and when home seemed to walk on eggshells around both Amanda and me. On the 7th day of my stay, I overheard another conversation that broke my heart. Michael and Amanda were in their bedroom with the door partly open, not realizing I had returned from the library. "Your mother is driving me crazy," Amanda was saying. "She's everywhere I look, judging how I run my home, making you feel guilty for working instead of entertaining her." "She's not doing any of that, Amanda," Michael replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "She's been keeping to herself and trying to stay out of our way. That's the passive-aggressive part. She's playing the martyr, making us feel bad, by being so pathetically undemanding. God, I can't wait until she's gone." There was a pause before Michael responded, his voice so low I almost couldn't hear it. "She's still my mother." "Yeah, well, I'm your wife. You need to decide where your loyalty lies." I quietly retreated back to the elevator and waited 10 minutes before returning, making sure to close the door loudly so they would know I was there. That evening, Amanda approached me with an unexpected smile. Her entire demeanor had changed, and she was suddenly warm and enthusiastic. "Nora, I've been thinking. We haven't had much quality time together, just us girls. What do you say? We go on a little shopping trip tomorrow, just you and me. We could drive up to Portland. They have some lovely boutiques there." I was surprised and a bit suspicious of this sudden change of heart, but also hopeful that perhaps she was making a genuine effort to connect. I agreed, and she seemed pleased. "Portland is about a 90-minute drive," she explained. "We'll make a day of it. It'll be fun." For the first time since arriving, I felt a glimmer of optimism. Maybe there was hope for our relationship after all. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect New England autumn day for our drive to Portland. Amanda appeared in the kitchen, wearing designer jeans, a cashmere sweater, and leather boots that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She seemed unusually cheerful, chatting about the boutiques we would visit and a special lunch spot she had in mind. Michael looked relieved to see us getting along as he kissed us both goodbye before heading to work. "Have a great time, ladies," he said. "This will be good for both of you." The drive to Portland was surprisingly pleasant. Amanda played music we both enjoyed and asked questions about Michael's childhood that seemed genuinely interested. She laughed at my stories of his science fair disasters and first attempts at cooking. For the first time, I felt like I was seeing the woman my son had fallen in love with. Our first stop in Portland was a boutique called Coastal Elegance, filled with clothing I would never normally consider. The price tags alone made me anxious, but Amanda insisted I try on several items. "This blue cardigan would look amazing." "With your eyes, Nora," she said, holding up a soft sweater that costs $320. Just try it on. You don't have to buy it. I reluctantly agreed, and to my surprise, the sweater did look lovely. I felt a flash of vanity seeing myself in the mirror, looking more stylish than usual. You should definitely get that, Amanda encouraged. Michael would love seeing you in something more modern. I checked the price tag again and shook my head. It's beautiful, but way out of my budget. Amanda frowned slightly, but moved on to another boutique where the pattern repeated. She would select expensive items, encourage me to try them on, then seem disappointed when I wouldn't purchase them. After 3 boutiques and no purchases, we headed to lunch at an upscale restaurant overlooking Casco Bay. Amanda ordered a bottle of wine despite my protests that I rarely drink at lunch. Loosen up, Nora, she insisted, pouring me a generous glass. This is our girls' day. No rules. The lunch was elaborate and expensive. Amanda ordered appetizers, entrees, and desserts, all while keeping my wine glass full. I began to feel uncomfortable about the cost, knowing she would likely expect me to contribute, but she waved away my concerns. My treat, she said magnanimously. Consider it a thank you for being so understanding about our busy schedules. By the end of lunch, I was feeling slightly lightheaded from the wine and full from the rich food. Amanda checked her watch and frowned. I need to make a quick call to check on a client, she said, standing up. The reception in here is terrible. I'll step outside for a minute and be right back. Wait here. I nodded, grateful for a moment alone to collect myself. The wine had made me sleepy, and I was looking forward to heading back to Boston soon. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Amanda hadn't returned. I began to worry and asked our server if she had seen a blonde woman in a cashmere sweater outside. The server shook her head. I decided to check for myself and gathered my purse. That was when I realized my phone was missing. I distinctly remembered placing it on the table earlier, but it was gone now. My purse felt lighter too. When I opened it, I discovered my wallet had been emptied of all cash except for a $5 bill and 4 $1 bills. My credit cards and ID were still there, but the $60 I had brought with me was gone. As panic began to rise, I found a folded note tucked into my wallet that hadn't been there before. In Amanda's elegant handwriting, it read, "Maybe this will teach you not to be such a burden. Find your own way home." Hey, the reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow. My daughter-in-law had deliberately stranded me in a city 90 miles from home with just $9 to my name. She had taken my phone, so I couldn't call for help, and most of my money, so I couldn't easily get back. The wine at lunch hadn't been generosity. It had been part of her plan to confuse and disorient me. I sat back down, my hands shaking. The server approached with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay? Your friend asked me to bring you this when you were ready to leave." She handed me the check for our lunch. Amanda hadn't paid after all. The total was $138, including the wine. "My friend seems to have left without me," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I don't have enough to cover this." The server's face shifted from concern to suspicion. "I'll need to get my manager," she said stiffly. The next hour was a humiliation I hope never to experience again. I had to explain the situation to the restaurant manager, showing him Amanda's note as proof I hadn't planned to dine and dash. He was skeptical, but eventually allowed me to pay what I could $9 and took my contact information for the remainder, which I promised to send as soon as I returned to Boston. Now completely broke, I stepped onto the street disoriented and afraid. It was mid-afternoon in a city I barely knew, with no money, no phone, and no clear way to get home. I tried to steady my breathing and think logically. The first step would be to find a police station or public place where I could use a phone. A kind store owner let me use their phone after I explained my situation. I tried calling Michael, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining what had happened as calmly as I could, though my voice broke several times. I had no other numbers memorized in this age of digital contacts. The store owner, a woman about my age named Linda, gave me a bottle of water and directions to the nearest police station. I thank God for her kindness on that terrible day. By the time I reached the police station, it was nearly 5 o'clock. Officer Jenkins, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, took my report and let me use the station phone to try Michael again. This time, he answered, sounding confused. "Mom, where are you? I thought you were staying with friends in Portland," Amanda said. "You ran into some old teaching colleagues and decided to extend your trip." The lie stunned me into momentary silence. When I found my voice, I explained what had actually happened. Michael's shock seemed genuine. "That's impossible," he said, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "There must be some misunderstanding. Amanda wouldn't do something like that." I read him the note she had left me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll come get you," he finally said. "But it will take me at least 2 hours to get there in evening traffic." 2 more hours of waiting in a police station, hungry, tired, and humiliated. I had never felt so vulnerable and alone. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead as I sat in the hard plastic chair, trying to maintain my composure. Officer Jenkins, who had taken my report, returned with a steaming cup of coffee and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "It's from my dinner," he explained with a small smile. "Nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese, but you look like you could use something." I accepted gratefully, trying to hold back tears at this simple kindness from a stranger when my own family had abandoned me. "You know, this isn't the first time I've seen something like this," Officer Jenkins said, sitting across from me. "Family can sometimes be crueler than strangers, because they know exactly where to strike." I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "My own son hasn't spoken to me in 8 years," he continued. "His wife decided I wasn't the right sort of father-in-law for her image. Too working class, I guess." "I'm so sorry," I managed to say. He shrugged. "Life goes on. But I'll tell you something I've learned in my 30 years on the force. Sometimes, when you're at your lowest, that's when the universe surprises you. Just when you think you've lost everything, you find something you weren't even looking for." His words stayed with me as I finished the sandwich. When I was done, I decided to walk to a convenience store across the street to get a small snack for later. $9. That was all I had left in the world at that moment. Well, actually, I had nothing since I'd given my last cash to the restaurant. But Officer Jenkins had pressed two $5 bills into my hand despite my protests. In the fluorescent glare of the convenience store, I stood looking at candy bars and chips, trying to decide how to spend my money most efficiently. That's when I saw the lottery display near the register. I had never been much of a gambler buying tickets, only occasionally for fun, but something compelled me to purchase one. Maybe it was Officer Jenkins's words about the universe surprising you. Or maybe it was just the desperate hope that something good could come from this terrible day. I spent $5 on a ticket, leaving myself with exactly $4. As the clerk handed me the small slip of paper, I felt a mixture of foolishness and defiance. At least this small act was my choice, the first thing I had decided for myself all day. By the time Michael arrived at the police station, it was after 7. He looked haggard and confused, his eyes darting around nervously, as if expecting Amanda to materialize and explain that this had all been a misunderstanding. The drive back to Boston was tense, with long stretches of uncomfortable silence, broken by Michael's halting attempts at conversation. "What I don't understand is why Amanda would do this," he kept saying. "It doesn't make sense." "Read the note again," I replied quietly, handing him the folded paper at a stoplight. He scanned it, his face paling. "But to strand you, with no way home, to take your phone, to empty your wallet. That's not just mean, it's cruel." Yes, I agreed. It is cruel, and it was deliberate. When we arrived at their condo, Amanda was waiting, her face a mask of surprise and concern. That might have been convincing if I hadn't known better. "Nora," she exclaimed. "What happened?" "Michael said you were stranded. I thought you were staying with friends." I stared at her, too exhausted and angry for pretense. "You know exactly what happened, Amanda. You left me alone with no phone, no money, and a $138 lunch bill." Amanda's expression shifted to one of wounded innocence. She turned to Michael, her eyes wide. "Michael, I don't know what she's talking about. We had lunch, yes, and then I had to take an urgent call from a client. When I came back, she was gone. I assumed she had run into friends she mentioned earlier and decided to stay with them." Michael looked between us, clearly torn. I could see him wanting to believe his wife, while also confronted with the evidence of her note. "What about this?" he asked, holding up the paper. Amanda glanced at it and let out a theatrical laugh. That was a joke. I left that hours earlier, when Nora was complaining about being a burden. It was just a silly prank to lighten the mood. I never actually left her. She must have misunderstood and panicked. "A joke," I repeated, my voice rising. "You think abandoning a 62-year-old woman in an unfamiliar city with $9 is a joke?" Amanda rolled her eyes. "Stop being so dramatic. It was just a little lesson about independence. You're always playing the helpless mother card to manipulate Michael. I thought it would be funny to turn the tables for once." Michael stepped between us, his face troubled. "Look, it's been a long day for everyone. Mom, why don't you get some rest? We can talk about this tomorrow when everyone's calmer." I stared at my son, suddenly seeing him clearly. He was not going to defend me. He was not going to hold Amanda accountable. He was going to take the path of least resistance, as he had been doing for years. Amanda smiled triumphantly behind his back, and something in me snapped. The last thread of patience, of family obligation, of hope that things could improve, simply broke. No, I said quietly. I won't be staying here tonight or any other night. Mom, don't be hasty, Michael began, but I cut him off. I need you to make a choice right now, Michael. Either she goes or I go. I will not spend another night under the same roof as someone who would deliberately put me in danger and then laugh about it. Amanda's fake concern morphed instantly into cold fury. She's lost her mind, Michael. You can't possibly choose your manipulative mother over your wife. Michael looked panicked, glancing between us. Mom, please, let's not make this an ultimatum. We can work this out. His hesitation was all the answer I needed. My own son couldn't bring himself to defend me, even now. I'll pack my things, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll need to borrow some money for a hotel tonight. 30 minutes later, I walked out of their condo with a small suitcase and $40 Michael had pressed into my hand, while Amanda fumed in the bedroom. I took a bus to a budget motel near the outskirts of the city, paying $36 for the cheapest room available. With my remaining $4, I bought a sandwich from a vending machine, eating it slowly in the small, dingy room that was now my temporary home. Before falling into an exhausted sleep, I remembered the lottery ticket in my purse. Almost as an afterthought, I checked the numbers on the motel's ancient television that was showing the evening news. And that was when everything changed. Again. As the 6 numbers were announced, I stared in disbelief at my ticket. I checked once, twice, 3 times, unable to process what I was seeing. I had matched all 6 numbers. According to the announcer, the jackpot was $62 million. In the span of 24 hours, I had gone from comfortable middle class to penniless to multi-millionaire. It was too much to comprehend, and I began to laugh, then cry, then laugh again alone in that small motel room with its faded curtains and worn carpet. The universe had indeed surprised me, just as Officer Jenkins had said, and my life would never be the same. The next morning, still in a state of shock, I called the state lottery office as soon as they opened. The woman on the phone calmly confirmed that there had been one winning ticket sold in Portland the previous day, and explained the verification process I would need to go through. Do not tell anyone about your win until you have secured your ticket and spoken with a financial advisor, she warned me. Not family, not friends, no one. I took her advice seriously. The ticket went into the motel safe while I began researching what to do next. I used the motel's computer to look up financial advisors who specialized in sudden wealth and made an appointment with one for the following day. Meanwhile, my phone, which Michael had returned to me before I left, remained silent for 3 days. Then, on the 4th day after my departure, a text from Amanda appeared. Nora, stop being so dramatic. It was just a joke. Michael misses you, but you're making this so difficult. Time to act like an adult and come home. I stared at the message, noting how she couldn't even be bothered to use proper punctuation or grammar. I chose not to respond. Another text followed an hour later. Seriously, this silent treatment is childish. It was a harmless prank. You were never in any danger. Sorry you can't take a joke. And then another. Michael is really upset. If you care about your son at all, you'd stop this nonsense and come home. Families forgive each other. The irony of Amanda suddenly caring about family values was not lost on me. I continued to ignore the messages, focusing instead on securing my future. The verification process with the Lottery Commission was underway, and I had met with Sarah, a financial advisor who specialized in sudden wealth syndrome. Sarah helped me understand that my actual take-home amount after choosing the lump sum option and paying taxes would be about $35 million. Still an unfathomable sum for someone who had been counting pennies just days before. We worked together to create a comprehensive financial plan. I would allocate money for immediate needs investments, for long-term security charitable giving, and a trust for Michael that would be controlled by me rather than directly accessible to him or Amanda. One of my first decisions was to establish a foundation aimed at supporting elderly people experiencing financial abuse and housing insecurity. Having felt the terror of being stranded without resources, I wanted to ensure others in similar situations would have somewhere to turn. With Sarah's help, I found a beautiful but modest home in a secure community about 30 miles from Boston. The house had 2 bedrooms, a sun-filled kitchen, and a small garden that reminded me of the one Robert and I had tended together for so many years. It cost far less than I could now afford, but it felt right, a place where I could be comfortable without ostentation. As the weeks passed, I began rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, many of whom I had lost touch with during my years of financial struggle and Michael's growing distance. Martha, my best friend from my teaching days, was especially supportive, helping me furnish my new home and introducing me to her circle of friends. I also began seeing a therapist, Dr. Rogers, to process the trauma and betrayal I had experienced. In our sessions, I learned about setting boundaries and recognizing manipulative behavior tools I wished I had possessed years earlier. All the while, the texts from Amanda continued growing increasingly manipulative. The apartment is so empty without you. Michael keeps looking at old family photos and getting sad. And we're having some financial difficulties right now. Michael would never ask, but we could really use your help. That's what family does, right? Michael called a few times always when Amanda was not around. His messages were apologetic, but vague, never directly acknowledging the severity of what had happened. He seemed to be hoping we could simply move past the incident without addressing it. I remained firm in my boundary, making it clear that I would not return to their home or resume normal relations until Amanda took full responsibility for her actions, and Michael acknowledged his role in enabling her behavior. Gradually, I felt myself transforming. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for years began to fade. I started taking better care of myself, eating properly, exercising, buying clothes that fit well and made me feel confident. I joined a book club and a gardening society, building a community of friends who valued me for myself, not what I could provide for them. Through it all, I kept my lottery win a complete secret. The Lottery Commission had honored my request for anonymity to the extent legally possible. But I knew it was only a matter of time before the news became public. I wanted to be fully prepared for that moment, with all my financial and legal protections firmly in place. That moment came exactly 6 weeks after my win, when the local news ran a story identifying me as the winner of the $62 million jackpot. They included a photo of me from the brief press conference the Lottery Commission had arranged, where I had announced the creation of my foundation, but shared few personal details. Within an hour of the news breaking, my phone exploded with messages. Old colleagues, distant relatives, and even former neighbors suddenly remembered my existence. But the messages I was waiting for came just as I had expected they would. First, Michael, Mom, is this true? $62 million. Please call me. Then Amanda, barely. 10 minutes later. Nora, we are so happy for you. What an amazing blessing. We should celebrate as a family. Call us. I smiled at the phone, but did not respond. Instead, I waited, knowing what would come next. It took less than a day for them to track down my new address. The security system I had installed showed them pulling up in their car that afternoon, Amanda taking extra time to fix her makeup and hair before approaching my front door. I took a deep breath and opened the door before they could ring the bell. Michael looked genuinely shocked to see me, his eyes widening as he took in my appearance. I had lost weight, styled my hair, and was dressed in a simple but elegant outfit that the old Nora would never have worn. Mom, he stammered. You look different. Thank you, I said calmly. Please come in. I led them into my living room, tastefully furnished with comfortable but quality pieces. Amanda's eyes darted around clearly, cataloguing the value of everything she saw. Her smile was wide and artificial as she rushed forward to embrace me. Nora, she exclaimed, we've been so worried about you, and now this amazing news. We're so happy for you. I stepped back from her attempted embrace. Are you? I asked mildly. That's not the impression I got from your texts, calling me childish and dramatic. Amanda's smile faltered only for a second. Oh, that. I was just concerned for you. Sometimes tough love is necessary, you know. But let's not dwell on unpleasant things. We should be celebrating. Michael looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. The silence stretched until he finally spoke. Mom, I want to say how sorry I am for everything that happened. I should have handled things differently. I waited, but that was apparently the extent of his apology. No acknowledgement of Amanda's cruelty, no recognition of his failure to protect me, just a vague statement that things should have been different. Amanda quickly jumped in. We've been going through some tough times, Nora. Michael's company had layoffs, and we're really struggling financially. The mortgage, my student loans, credit card debt. She let out a dramatic sigh. It's been so stressful. I noticed her designer watch and handbag hadn't been sacrificed to these financial difficulties. I'm sorry to hear that, I said neutrally. Financial stress can be very difficult. Amanda nodded eagerly. It really can be. And family is so important during hard times, don't you think? Supporting each other, helping out when needed. Her meaning couldn't have been clearer. If she had directly asked for money, which I suspected was coming next. But before she could continue, I decided to address the elephant in the room. Speaking of difficult times, I'd like to talk about what happened in Portland. Amanda's face immediately shifted to exasperation. Are you still on that? It was a joke that went wrong, Nora. I've apologized multiple times. You need to let it go. Have you apologized? I asked. I don't recall hearing an actual apology. Well, I'm sorry you took it the wrong way, she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. But, honestly, you're remembering it all wrong. I never intended for you to be stranded. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the note she had written me, preserved in a plastic sleeve. I handed it to Michael. Would you read this aloud, please? Michael reluctantly took the paper, his face paling as he read, Maybe this will teach you not to be such a burden. Find your own way home, A. Amanda's expression flickered between shock at seeing the evidence preserved and calculation as she tried to find a way to spin it. She finally settled on a new approach: tears. I was under so much stress, she sobbed, dabbing carefully at her eyes to avoid smudging her makeup. I've been struggling with depression and anxiety. It was a terrible lapse in judgment. I never thought you'd take it seriously. Michael put his arm around her, looking at me with pleading eyes. Mom, can't we put this behind us? Amanda's really sorry, and we've both missed you so much. I looked at them both calmly. I've had a lot of time to think over the past few weeks. I've realized that I allowed myself to be mistreated for far too long out of a misguided sense of family obligation. That ends today. I explained that I had consulted with financial advisors and attorneys to create a secure future for myself. I also revealed that I had established a trust for Michael. The trust has conditions, I explained. The money will be available to you, Michael, not jointly to both of you. And it comes with requirements: financial counseling, therapy, and demonstrated personal growth. Amanda's tears dried up instantly, her expression hardening. That's ridiculous. We're married. His money is my money. Not in this case, I said firmly. The trust is structured to protect the funds from being considered marital assets. My lawyers were very thorough. Michael looked stunned, while Amanda's face flushed with anger. You can't do that, she spat. It's manipulative and controlling. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. That's an interesting perspective from someone who abandoned an elderly woman without resources, as a lesson about being a burden. This is about punishing me, isn't it? She demanded. You're trying to turn Michael against me because you're jealous of our relationship. I shook my head. This isn't about punishment, Amanda. It's about boundaries and consequences. Actions have them even when they're disguised as jokes. The meeting deteriorated rapidly after that. Amanda stormed out with Michael following after her, torn between his wife's fury and his desire for the financial security I was offering. As they drove away, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The confrontation had been difficult, but necessary. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had stood firmly for my own worth and dignity without wavering. 6 months have passed since that day, and my life has transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My new home has become a true sanctuary, filled with friends, laughter, and peace. The garden blooms with flowers Robert would have loved, and I've even adopted a cat named Olive who keeps me company on quiet evenings. My foundation, Second Chances for Seniors, has already helped dozens of older adults facing housing insecurity or financial abuse. We provide emergency housing, legal advocacy, and financial counseling. Each person we help reminds me of those frightening hours in Portland and reinforces my commitment to ensuring no one else faces such vulnerability alone. 3 months ago, I received news that Michael and Amanda had separated. According to mutual friends, the strain of financial troubles combined with Amanda's anger over the trust had finally fractured their relationship. Michael had begun to see, perhaps for the first time, the manipulative patterns that had controlled their marriage. He started attending therapy as one of the conditions of the trust, and our relationship has slowly begun to heal. During one particularly emotional session together, he finally acknowledged the full extent of his failure to protect me. "I knew what she was doing to you, Mom," he admitted. Tears streaming down his face, I saw it happening, but I was too afraid of her reaction if I stood up to her. I convinced myself it wasn't that bad, that you were strong enough to handle it. I was a coward, and I'm so sorry. That honest acknowledgement meant more to me than any amount of money ever could. We still have a long way to go, but I'm cautiously optimistic that our relationship can be rebuilt on a healthier foundation. Amanda, I've heard, has moved on to a new relationship with a wealthy business owner. I wish her no ill will, but am grateful she is no longer in a position to hurt my son or me. One of the most unexpected joys of this new chapter has been my friendship with Officer Jenkins, the kind police officer who helped me in Portland. After the news of my lottery win broke, he reached out to congratulate me. We began meeting for coffee occasionally, and those meetings gradually evolved into dinner dates and long conversations. At 65, Jim Jenkins has a lifetime of stories and a gentle wisdom that reminds me in many ways of Robert. He makes me laugh, challenges me to think differently about the world, and never, ever makes me feel like a burden. Our relationship is based on mutual respect and genuine enjoyment of each other's company, something I had almost forgotten was possible. Last week, Jim and I went back to Portland together. We visited the convenience store where I had bought the winning ticket now, sporting a large sign proclaiming it the luckiest store in Maine. The owner recognized me immediately and insisted on taking a photo with us, which now sits framed on my mantel. We also went to the police station, where I had waited those long, terrible hours. Jim introduced me to his former colleagues, and I made a donation to their community outreach program for vulnerable seniors. It felt like coming full circle, transforming a place of pain into one of purpose. Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm struck by how a moment of cruelty became the catalyst for profound change. Amanda thought she was teaching me a lesson about being a burden, but instead, she inadvertently set me free. The $9 that was meant to humiliate me became the instrument of my independence. People often ask if the money changed me. I always tell them that the money didn't change who I was. It revealed who others were. And more importantly, it showed me who I could be when I finally valued myself enough to demand respect. The truth is, it wasn't the lottery ticket that saved me, but the courage to walk away with nothing but my dignity. That was the real prize, worth far more than $62 million could ever be. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my experience has touched you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message about self-worth and setting boundaries, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the best investment you can make is in your own happiness and peace of mind.